Yeah, good point. I guess I wasn't prepared for a time in history that sellers would be in a position where they could say, no, I'm not accepting inspections or radon test. I'll take the whichever buyer that's in line that agrees to that. So I agree with Ben. It's time for that time to be over. In fairness to everybody, really. We all need to remember that radon's a tremendous health risk. Just commenting to my family, it's my time of year. My doctor says because of my exposure to radon, I qualify for a lung scan every year. And I'm like, if it's free, I'll gladly take it. So I just made that appointment today. But I also found it unusual that the staff made that comment. In other words, it seems like the medical community has been one of the frustrating resources that could have helped us more. But I was quite taken. The first thing they say is, "What's your smoking history?" And when he asked me my smoking history, this has been say 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I said, "Well, you want to know all about my smoking history, but I work in the radon industry, and do you know the facts on radon?" And he says, "Well, you interrupted me, and that was my next question. What is your exposure rate to radon, or do you know?" And I said, "Well, I work in the industry, so I have a big exposure rate." And he says, "Then you qualify the same as a smoker would." And I'm like, I'll take that kind of comment any day. If we got the medical industry behind us, it'd be a big deal. So maybe they're coming on board. So
Well, I know, I mean, I hope that it's becoming more. I know that I think I've mentioned this before in the group, but I tested my in-laws' house, and my mother-in-law had an at-home daycare for 35 years. She used her basement for the kids over there. She was in the house for 20 hours a day, except for to run out and run errands and things like that. The parents brought the kids to her, and their radon level was 20 when I tested it. So uh, David's guys put a system in there that same week. And I knew better. I mean, I'd been working with David for years, and it just didn't occur to me to test my in-laws, or their house was built in 1980. So it's a relatively easy one to mitigate. But other than my father-in-law has like 4 sump pumps in there because he's neurotic about making sure there's no water. But yeah.
well, that's a good point. Certainly don't want to get off track, but the third house we ever did, which 26 years ago, was a person, not an old person, but he was wheelchair bound. Had been all of his life, and he spent his life in his family room above a crawl space. And I guess he was in his late 40s. Like I said, it's been 26 years ago, but he had a 25 picocuries per liter above that crawl space, and he had lung cancer. And I'm like, holy cow, here's this poor guy that's lived his life in a wheelchair and basically spent 24 hours a day above a crawl space that was obviously his cause of death. I mean, this is a non-smoker guy, so what are you going to say? But I remember that was only about the third radon system that we had ever done. So talk about a reality check. I think sometimes we all need to remember what they keep telling us, that it's a very serious health threat. And we see the examples of it. I think that Ben brought that back to my mind. I hadn't thought about that for a long time. But I think if we all look back, we've got situations that maybe we were too late to change, or at least maybe situations that we're glad we did change before there was a story like this poor person in the wheelchair. And I guess maybe we accidentally touched on a subject that is it's very important that we all remember the role we play. First thing you got to do is put food on the table, no question about it. But we also perform a role that not very many people perform. So that's a good point, Ben.
Well, and just, when you're mitigating and you know what the level was, or those of you that are, testers watching this, my comment to my mother-in-law is, you need to tell your doctor, right? You need to get in like that, like, okay, we're going to take care of the radon and you're going to be set from now on. But like, that should put her in a spot to get the lung screenings, during her checkups. And, I don't know how good, I think she's on Medicare now, if that's, how good they are on paying for that and getting that in a timely manner. But, um, yeah, it's definitely something that, that she's got on her list now. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's there's more to this sad story that just came to mind, but I got to tell it. This guy had a little, I call him a purse dog. Wasn't exactly a purse dog, but a little dog that lived on his life. I mean, lived on his lap all of its life. And I don't know how old this dog was, but it was pretty old. And his biggest concern was, while he was dying, what's my dog going to do for company? My dog lives on my life. So he bought another dog that was of the same breed, and thought that his best idea he could come up with was get this dog a friend. And the dog wouldn't have anything to do with it no matter what he did. So he had to get rid of the dog. But of course, I don't have any idea what happened to the dog, but I thought it was also a touching story that his biggest concern was, what's going to happen to my dog that's lived on my lap all this time? And getting another dog to keep it company certainly didn't work for him. But anyway, that's just
Well,
that's the
thanks for
second.
bringing us down, David. We let's go
Yeah,
ahead and end on that
yeah,
note. Let's
yeah,
talk about some
yeah.
dying
We'll
dogs.
talk to you next week. Yeah,
It's bad
sorry
enough
about that.
we all work in this poisonous gas that's killing people, but yeah, let's talk about the dead dogs too.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, no kidding.
hey, I've mentioned this before. We've got a few people on here. We've got some two or three people watching over in the Facebook group. But we always like to start these weeks. We skipped last week, so it's been a couple weeks. But anybody got any big wins, big things that have happened in your business, things that you're proud of, or some things that you've implemented that are going well? We want to jump in on that? Nobody. We got a few people over Facebook. It takes 30 seconds for it to delay over to Facebook, so we'll see if anybody chimes in on that. But hey, if you guys got anything, we want to celebrate you. We know that um, part of the reason that we're doing these calls is not only obviously the education, but the camaraderie of being with uh, other people that are experiencing the same thing, that are doing the same thing, that have the same struggles, have the same successes. And I am on three other calls like this during the week with other agency owners, and just talking about ways that we help other people out. And it's nice to be able to experience that with other people. And so yeah, be prepared
Ben,
when we come. Yeah, go ahead.
hey, I just wanted to just pass on a little reminder. It kind of took me by surprise a little bit. And that is a lady called me, looked us up and on the internet, and she had some radon questions, and she's a town about 4 hours drive south of me, and as we're chatting, I said, well, my daughter lives in that town, and she's visiting for the Easter weekend. So how about if I send a radon eye down with her, and you can do a little bit more long-term measuring, just for a gee whiz kind of thing, to see what's going on in your home. And so I did that. And I didn't think anything of it, because it's going to be a while before I can get down to her to give her an estimate. And that was all part of the conversation. And next thing I know, we get a notification somebody gave us a 5-star Google review, and and she just talked about the great customer service and how comfortable she was working with us. And we haven't even done anything yet, but
Yeah.
it just was just kind of a reminder that everything we do gets noticed, good or bad.
Yeah.
So the simple little thing just got us a 5-star review. It's kind of amazing, but kind of cool.
That's great.
Well, and
That
I laughingly say, you know, Ron's in Alaska, so 4 hour drive to a radon system is definitely in the scope. So and I would like
Like
to
a
also
trip to the
say,
grocery store, really.
really? Well, I also say you guys hear me, guys and ladies hear me until I'm blue in the face, but I bet you before Ron makes it down there, that same consumer will call him and ask him if he would mind if they loan that detector or that device to their next door neighbor or their daughter or their father or somebody at church. I preach that till you people are sick of hearing it, but I would bet that Ron will get that call from that lady because somebody in her life is going to say, wow, is there any way I can borrow that? And so Ron's going to go down there to do 2 jobs or 3 or 4 or 5. So
yeah,
be
if you
ready,
could stack
Ron.
those up, that'd be great. I mean, if you can get, 2 or 3 on that drive, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, and as that was happening, I just happened to be in a town, well, in Anchorage, which is an hour south of us, and a guy had texted me the day before about had the same thing, looked us up on the internet and had some radon questions, and I said, mind if I give you a call? And he said, sure. But I was swamped and didn't make the phone call. It came in towards the end of the day and a bunch of stuff happened. And then so yesterday I realized, oh, I never called this guy back, and it was kind of embarrassing. He told me he was about 3 hours drive south of me, but he happened to be about 20 minutes away from where I was right then. And I said, hey, I got an Echo Cube. If you can meet me on the highway, I'll send this down with you. And so when David, when you said get more than one, yeah. I mean, they're not related, but like you said, they'll be passing these units around. And by the time I do get down there, we'll have a very worthwhile trip, I'm sure.
Yeah, you'll have to look up the motels in the area. uh, good for you. As far as a discussion for today, we talked a little bit, Ben and I did, and I think he sent it out. I've had a few phone calls lately. I will say that I speak to people from all over the United States every day, as you folks know, and we talked earlier in earlier sessions about how the number one problem right now, or the number one question, seems to be now, how do I hire help? How do I hire help that has that's going to be help? And we talked about different things about that, and that's not necessarily what we're going into today. But I would like to say one thing. One of my customers somewhere out east, I can't even tell you where, it could have been Ohio, New York, somewhere out there. We were talking yesterday, and he says, Dave, I'm so busy, I'm not sure what to do because I'm booked out for 6 weeks. And I said, it's not my job to tell you how to run your business, but I will tell you from being a mitigator for almost 25 years that if you're booked out for 6 weeks, you're going to start losing them because they're going to find a different place to put their money, or they're going to find someone else to do it. If you're any further than 3 weeks out, my suggestion or my path would have been find me some help, period. Because you can't run your business effectively if you're too far out either. So it's not just saying, oh, I've got these people babysat, they're all going to wait for me. You're also under the pressure where you can't run your business. So, no matter what you guys and girls and ladies do, you can't survive if you can't find the time to run your business. So it's not all work. You still got to own that business and run that business. And this was a good example of a guy he was hesitant to hire any help. His first comment is the same one we all make. Oh my gosh, well, if I take the responsibility of hiring someone, what do I do if I run out of business? And I'm like, well, that's what holds all of us up. I would feel terrible hiring someone and then having to get to a point that you'd say, I'm sorry, I know you have a family, but I can't use you anymore because I ran out of business. But that just doesn't seem to happen. So look at history also, but just wanted to mention him as an example of a person that needs to think more aggressively, more positive about the future. But today we were going to talk, I would say the number one question I'm getting right now is that it is about how do I get good help? But one of the top questions that I have every day is, hey, I got this tough home, I got this problem home, I got this home that won't make it. What's your suggestion? And I'm not the one that's there, but I do have my own thoughts of what does drastically reduce the percentage of problem homes. And I want to first mention two things. First of all, you folks can look at tons of resources with tons of examples and suggestions. And I'll put it this way: what works for someone works for someone. So if you know, a lot of us folks out there that seem to be given suggestions based on whatever, I would say mine's based on past knowledge, working in a difficult area. We all have different ideas about how to solve our problems or reduce our problems, and mine is just one of those. And I will say anybody that has an idea that works for them, so be it. But I have had some resistance to what I think will help you reduce your numbers. But I will tell you that it's a daily phone call for me, and one of the most important things, you can't afford to have failures on your list for long. And they not only make you lose money, they make you lose credibility. So, you know, for instance, just to recite a couple I have, had a call from yesterday from a customer that does 6 homes a day. But he says, Dave, I've got eight on my board right now that didn't make it. And he says, do you have any ideas on how I can reduce that list? And I said, well, why don't you watch tomorrow, because some of those ideas might help you. But I do have some ideas about what helped us drastically reduce our list of failures that we had to return to. But I also want to stress that so much of it has to do with topography. You know, all you folks listening know that substrate material has a whole bunch to do with success and failure, but topography has so much to do with it that I get a little bit frustrated sometimes when someone thinks they have the answer for every solution, because there is no answer for every solution because of topography differences and building practice differences. But I'd like to cover a little bit. My personal experience says that we drastically reduced any callbacks in a very difficult area, very difficult, a lot of wet clay, a very difficult area. We drastically reduced our callbacks and our failures once we understood the use of fans. There's a couple other things that'll go along with that, but we were first going to talk about how to choose the right fan for the job. And my opinion is very simple, but it's still a learning process. So I'm going to flash this up. Ben, you've got a method that everyone can look at this, but this
Yeah,
is
I'm going to throw it up on the screen. So it's
Okay.
going to, let me see. This should do it. All right. Can everybody see that on their screen now?
Yeah.
Cool.
You know, we live off of that fan flow chart, and most of you folks watching it, I always say, take a picture and put it on your phone because you need to refer to it all the time. But I will also say that in general terms, there's only 3 fans that you need to refer to. And when I do a presentation to inexperienced people or realtors or whatever, when I used to, I'd say there's basically 3 kinds of fans. There's the fan that you'd use, that your wife's going to make you use to vacuum the carpet in your house. And there's the shop vac that you got out in the garage that will hold up a bowling ball. And then there's the great big fan that they use to vacuum the carpet in the church parsonage. So that's your 3 kinds of fans. You got high volume, high suction, and standard. And so let's start with the standard fan. In this case, we would call it the Maverick, of course, as most of you know. So every fan has its maximum capability. And as a general rule, we feel that if you can't get 40 cubic foot out of a home, you're not going to make it. That's just a generalization. We like to throw that number at you at 40. So what we say is if you put a Maverick on a home, we're also big fans in large suction pits. If unless it's a really good aggregate, if my guys leave without 3 5-gallon buckets out of a suction pit, I have them go back and finish the job. So we're big on big suction pits, but we also think, or our belief is, my company policy is, I should say, if they put a Maverick on that house and the manometer is over 1.25, then I know you have a suction problem. I know you have a volume going up that pipe is simply borderline as to being enough to fix that house. And so we run very simple numbers with that. If you've got a Maverick that's over 1.25, get rid of it. And we go straight to an Eagle. There's in between fans, but we'll go straight to an Eagle. We're going to make this simple anyway. So then if you put an Eagle on it, an Eagle's capable of raising that manometer, so it's going to. But if you go, let's say you put a Maverick on and you've hit 1.5, take the dang thing off. Don't take the chance. There's probably a 50% chance it's not going to make it. That's not worth it. It's simply not worth it. So there's a 50% chance it will, still not worth it. So we go straight to an Eagle. Okay, you put an Eagle on there and you run into the same thing. Once it gets up to 3.5, it's not enough fan either. So typically, like I say, I come from a wet clay atmosphere, topography speaking. So, all right, so now I've got an Eagle on there and I'm at 3.5. I'm still not confident enough to go home. I don't need consumers calling me saying, hey, I put my faith in you and now my family's not safe. I no longer trust you, which can happen. So here I am sitting at 3.5 with an Eagle. I got two choices. I either put more holes in the floor to give me additional volume, and you can do all the smoke test, all the pressure field extension test you want, but some of the homes I deal with don't have pressure field extension tests. So we'll kind of throw that out. A great diagnostic. But we're not going to talk about any of that. It's something that we won't talk about. But so you've got an Eagle on there at 3.5. You got two choices. You either start drilling another hole with the hope of bringing that pressure down, or you got one other choice, and that's an Eagle Extreme. But if you put an Eagle Extreme on it, it's possible it'll take it to 4.25. And at 4.25, you're still down to drilling another hole. So in other words, if we're talking strictly suction problems where you're into a home that has sand, I refer to it as a bucket. You can't pull air through a bucket of sand. You can't pull air through a bucket of mud. So I use the three numbers. At 1.5, I get rid of that Maverick. At 3.25 to 3.5, I get rid of that Eagle or drill more holes. And at 4.25, an Eagle Extreme is no longer effective. So it works, and it has drastically reduced our callbacks in a very difficult area to mitigate. So there you are. Very simple. You just keep those three numbers in mind, with the understanding that every fan has the capability of changing the manometer based on its design. So a Maverick, if it hits 1.5, get rid of it. Then you put an Eagle on. If that Eagle goes over 3.25, drill an additional hole or get rid of it. If the Eagle Extreme goes to 4.25, same situation. You've got to have another hole. So all of that's a very simple way to help reduce your callbacks based on fans. Has anybody got any questions about that?
I mean, obviously the key is making sure you have one of each of those fans on your truck, because that allows you to swap that out while you're standing there.
Well, absolutely. And there are in-between fans that you can get through sometimes on, but I think the longer you're in this business, the more you realize callbacks are so expensive that sometimes when you fear a callback, or even when you get a callback, you don't want to mess around with too much in between. You want to do something where we all know that the third callback is, I've been here before. The third callback, the consumer's calling your competition saying, I don't think this guy knows what he's doing. Do you have any suggestions? And that's always an embarrassing position to be in. So as I said, this has drastically reduced our callbacks. But another thing, I wrote this stuff down, but I can't. I wrote down the word topography. I'm sure I spelled it wrong. But as I said, topography is a big deal. But I believe that this fan flow chart, or this fan sizings, or fan versus manometer works whatever topography you're in. It's going to be at least a value to you. So
How about questions? Anybody have questions so far on the flow chart? Everybody understand this? Or
I'm gonna go ahead and jump in and embarrass myself because I'm not sure that I do understand everything you're talking about there, David. Ben, could you throw that chart back up here?
I'm going to throw it back up here. And David, you can see the chart on there. Can you kind of explain what these numbers mean? Obviously at the top, we're looking at the 0 inches, 0.5 inches, 1 inches. Those are column inches on your manometer, correct?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Let's just simply look at the Maverick. Good question, Ron. But
So
let's
look
look
at the
at the
Maverick right up
Maverick.
here.
And if let's say the top numbers are the measurement on your manometer.
Okay.
So you've got a manometer measurement on a Maverick at 1.5. You're down to that magic number of 40 that we spoke about earlier. If you can't pull 40, you're probably not going to fix a home. So here you are, the Maverick at 1.5, and then it tells you how many CFM are going up that pipe, how much volume is going up that pipe. Now, the thing that we know about how much is going up that pipe is we can't control what it is. We call it air. A lot of times I refer to how much air is going up the pipe, but a percentage of that is radon, and that percentage never changes. So
David, what's CFM?
CFM is
cubic feet
per minute.
Okay. So this number here that we're looking at, this 40, is you're assuming that this is the amount of cubic feet per minute that's moving at 1.5 column inches, correct?
That's correct. Very good.
So,
very good. That's
yeah.
Exactly.
So if you're over here at 0.5 with your Maverick, then in theory you're pulling 201 cubic feet per minute, correct?
Right. And I think we all know my favorite number is 0.75 with a Maverick as far as the results, but you get down in there, you're moving a lot of volume. And here's what we know about volume. The amount of stuff going up that pipe in terms of cubic foot per minute, we can't control what it is. It's going to be air, it's going to be other soil gases, it's going to be moisture, vapor, and it's going to be radon. But what I do know, or what we all know, is that percentage of radon is never going to change. So let's just say 20% of what's going up that pipe in your cubic foot per minute is radon. Well, 20% of 40 cubic foot a minute is not very much, but 20% of 201 is. So as I said, you can't change the percentage of radon that's that mix, but you know that percentage is stable. I truly believe that the manometer fan comparison has been the thing that has helped us the most in reducing callbacks.
Right.
So all the years we did this.
So here's what's confusing me on this, David. So you said that 1.75 is that's your goal. That's where you want to see the line on the manometer.
0.75. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
0.75.
Yeah.
So we're looking for somewhere in between, this 201 and 116, column
right.
cubic feet.
So the 40, so when you say 40 is the magic number, it's at say 0.75, you're way above 40.
Well, 40 is the number where he's switching to the next fan.
Yeah.
40 is where he's saying,
okay, so you're
I
okay.
don't, yeah, yeah.
So
40
you're okay if
minimal,
it's pulling a 0.5 inch and it's at 201, you're okay with that.
well, absolutely. 40 is the minimal acceptable
Minimum.
volume.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So
Good question again. So,
okay.
And remember, these are just general rules. In my opinion, these rules will get you much less callbacks, as I said, but I call them 80% effective. I don't think there's anything that's 100% effective, from pressure field extension testing to fan manometer comparisons. The only thing that's 100% effective is a continuous monitor. And so, as I said, if I put a Maverick on there and it hits anywhere near 1.5, I know two things. I know I need to change fans, but I also know I need to change fans because I have resistance. And just because you drill a hole and you get into some good substrate, I had this phone call yesterday. I drilled a hole and the substrate material was beautiful, the best thing I could ever put in. I put my Maverick on it, which should have been all I needed. My manometer maxed out at 2. I did some smoke testing and could get no communication. And I'm like, well, I've seen situations where the builder or the plumber will dig the sump basin in after the fact and take all that dirt and just kind of make a trough around the edges of that sump area. So he drilled his hole 7 inches from the sump pump, and something had him restricted from getting to the far areas. But what we did know was when that manometer went to 2, that Maverick was basically ineffective, but it told us some valuable information, which was very poor communication. So
yeah, so if you're here at 2, then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to jump up to
an
the eagle. And so then you put the eagle on there, and hopefully that sweet spot on the eagle. Are you still looking for 0.75, or are you okay with?
Well, just drop that thought, because we've identified we have a lot of pressure problems. So the eagle's never going to go that low because pressure's already been identified. We know communication sucks. So when we put that eagle on, we're hoping for less than 3.5. Look at the numbers.
Yeah.
So if we put that eagle on and we're 3.5 or higher, then we still got the same problem, because just because the Maverick doesn't communicate, and I'm trying my best not to make this complicated, folks, because it isn't. It's very simple. An eagle has the ability to raise that pressure on the scale of the manometer. Just accept that, because the concept is a Maverick at 1.5 is no longer effective because you have too much resistance. An eagle at 3.5 is no longer acceptable because you have too much resistance. A eagle extreme is no longer effective at 4.25 because you have too much resistance. So you have to do something in the eagle or the eagle extreme status.
Oh yeah, I'm on the wrong one.
Yeah. So
there you go.
Oftentimes when we get an eagle at 3.5, we try to find a nice, neat place to drill an additional hole and make a second suction point. But sometimes, especially if finding that nice spot is not available due to finished basement and other situations, we switch to the Eagle Extreme, because the Eagle Extreme can save you from drilling another hole. It has the power to do it. So I put an Eagle Extreme on it, and it only goes to 4. I'm going to walk away. Now I may leave a radon eye when I walk away, because I still have some concern.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, so you're talking about it at 4, you're sitting at 67 versus, you were at 40, you've not quite you've got a more than a 50% increase, but your goal would be is if you could get that,
oh, the more volume, the better, as a general rule. Now you start getting real low, like your manometer doesn't hardly register. You got other problems. But as a general rule, the lower the manometer, the more success you're going to have because the more volume's going up that pipe. And like I said, 20% of that may be radon, but 20% of 100 cubic foot is a heck of a lot more radon than 20% of 40 cubic foot.
Right.
That all
Now your sweet spot of 0.75, does that change depending on the fan? Does that sweet spot is there a different number for different fans for your sweet spot?
Yes, it does, Ron. But the point of it is, until you get to 1.5 or higher, it's not cost effective, energy effective, or noise effective to move to a different fan. In other words, if your footprint is it also, we haven't talked about footprint changing the scenario too, but let's not even talk about that now. But if you have a Maverick on a home with a reasonable footprint, let's say 2,000 square foot or less footprint, and you got a Maverick on it, and it's reading 1.25 or less, you should feel very confident. And switching to a bigger fan is a waste of energy for the consumer. It's noisier and simply not necessary. So you got the right fan to begin with. But as soon as you start getting 1.25 or higher at 1.5, you got to realize you got the wrong fan on your house. On the house you're doing has the wrong fan. Now there's still a 50% chance it's going to make it, but 50% is simply not good enough. So at one point between 1.25 and 1.5, we put it back in the box. We're not taking that chance, but we're also not going to drill a second hole for a Maverick. We're not going to do anything but put it back in a box because it has become an ineffective fan and we have other choices.
But David, that was going to be one of my questions would be if you're sitting at this in an unfinished basement, would you do a second suction point, or would you, I mean, and again, probably if we're talking about homes built after 1980, it's not even a thing, but like depending, it's all based on your, whatever, right?
Another good question. I don't want to drill a second hole in a person's basement, not because of labor, because of intrusion. Just because it's a finished basement, I'm doing my daughter's right now that's got all kinds of stuff in the way that I wish it didn't have because they weren't thinking about finishing. But I'm never going to put a hole in a person's basement that's unnecessary because it's too invasive to their atmosphere, to their home. So as been good question. As I said though, if a Maverick becomes ineffective, a Maverick's only going to be ineffective if the footprint is larger than 2,200 square foot, or if the manometer's close to 1.5 or more. That's when the Maverick starts becoming ineffective. It can become ineffective because it doesn't have enough power to pull a large footprint, no matter what the substrate material is, or it becomes ineffective when the substrate material is so poor that you can't get communication. That's when it's got to go back in the box. 80%, 75% of the fans I sell in my business are Mavericks, because most of the time a Maverick will work in today's world. I get another call just this morning. I just wrote down a couple calls. I got a call saying, do you even have a fan that would take care of a 6,500 square foot footprint? I'm like, that's a big footprint, but we're talking $3-4 million homes. We don't have them in my area, but there's plenty of places to. But he said he's got 6,500 square feet, and he's got what he's going to assume is great substrate material, new home. And so I said, yes, I do. I have a fan that will handle 6,500 square feet without you having to build two systems or do anything off the wall. And that happens to be a Legend Extreme. And we could talk a little bit about that fan later if we have time, but that's a magic fan. And I'll tell all you ladies and men that I spent the first 18 years of my career going to bed at night praying for a stronger fan, because in the old days, we didn't even have anything as powerful as an Eagle. And boy, especially in these hard substrate areas like I live in, every time you did a radon system, you kept saying, man, if I had a more powerful fan, it sure would have helped me out of this situation. Well, now we do. I mean, there's fans that will suck the earth up into them. And so
So
go ahead.
So David, just coming back to the chart and the things that you said. So you were using an example of a Maverick, and you said you would never drill a second hole on a Maverick. You would go up, you would upgrade to an Eagle or an Eagle Extreme. So now let's say that you used your Eagle or even your Eagle Extreme, and it's not quite doing it yet. At what point do you upgrade the fan from there as opposed to drilling another hole? Because you mentioned, well, I may be drilling another hole with that Eagle Extreme. And I'm thinking, why wouldn't you go up a fan and save drilling that other hole?
Another good question. And I can't go up from the Eagle Extreme. In other words, that's the top. Now there is a.
Oh, I thought the Legend was the top.
Well, the Legend's a top for volume. The Eagle's a top for suction. So
Okay.
another good question. Well, I can't go past an Eagle Extreme, but you remember also that every time you do go up, you've increased noise and energy usage. And one of our biggest challenges in this industry is getting a home fixed and then everybody saying, well, I can't stand that noise. And so another reason why you don't move up till you have to. But what I said, if we go back and really make this simple, guys and ladies, because it's not complicated. I put a Maverick on a home. The manometer goes to 1.5. I know I've made a mistake. My substrate material did not communicate.
There.
Pull it off. I put it in the box and I put an Eagle on. My Eagle goes to 2.5. I'm happy as I can be and I go home. But my Eagle goes to 3.5. And I know I used a magic number of 40, but my Eagle goes to 3.5. I know I still have some resistance. And in order to feel more confident and to get the numbers as low as possible, my resistance is still pretty high on that Eagle. I'm going to seriously consider another suction point to get it a little bit lower. So I would
as
rather
opposed to an Eagle Extreme.
Yes, exactly, Ron. And the reason I would do that as opposed to an Eagle Extreme is an Eagle Extreme takes you up one more notch in noise.
Okay.
And so with that Eagle Extreme, you might only feel confident drilling another hole too. So it's a decision between the Eagle and Eagle Extreme. Sometimes becomes a head scratcher, but we typically stay down to the Eagle if there's reasonable sense in leaving it an Eagle. We want to leave it an Eagle. So let me go through it one more time very simply. I put a Maverick on, it goes to 1.5. I made a mistake. Take it off, put it in the box, put it back in the trailer. I put an Eagle on. It goes to 2.5. I'm happy as a lark. It goes to 3.5. I'm starting to worry about it, so I'm probably going to put a second hole in. I'm either going to put a second hole or I'm at least going to leave a radon eye or some device behind. I keep that Eagle on and I'm at a 4. Okay, if I'm at a 4 and I don't have a place to put a second hole, I'm on Eagle Extreme material. So at 3.5, I consider a second hole or an Eagle Extreme. Pat, did you have a question?
Yeah, Pat's got a question.
Yeah, when you talk about drilling a second suction hole, are you teeing into that same fan or are you installing a whole other fan?
I tee into the same fan. Another great question. And you'll get a lot of controversy on this statement too, Pat. But if I typically build my residential systems in 3-inch, unless it's a big footprint. I have for 25 years and thousands of systems. And there's argument about that too, that I would say goes both ways. But if I'm going to do a secondary, it's because I have pressure problems. My secondary is going to be in 2-inch. First of all, it's less invasive. And secondly, if you can't get enough air to fill a 3-inch pipe, why in the heck do you want another 3-inch pipe? So what we have always done when we go to a combination home that has a crawl space basement, or when we go to a second suction point, we always drop down to 2-inch pipe because there's a reason you're doing a secondary, and that reason has to do with pipe volume. You simply don't need it. So I keep 2-inch on the pipe on the trailer all the time because we use 2-inch
Right.
quite often, because in my topography, there's plenty of times you do a secondary hole. And so I hope that I didn't make this complicated. And Ron, you still look like you're questioning a little bit, but this is so simple.
No, you've explained it quite well, and I appreciate you spending the extra time. What the look on my face is about is I'm thinking, okay, first of all, to clarify something you just said was if we have a combination crawl space and basement. So what you're really talking about is a slab on grade and a crawl space on the same footprint for a home.
Well, yes and no, but of course, in my part of the country, multitudes of homes have a 3/4 of the home is a basement that's 8 feet below earth, and then a crawl space addition is 4 feet above earth.
I should take
Okay.
downstairs. I should just take my camera downstairs.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's what I'm sitting on right now.
So,
yeah.
Okay, so we just did a job this last week that was it was $1 million home. So in our area, that's a big home. And it had a crawl space, or sorry, it had a basement with slab on grade for most of the footprint. But the area underneath, and I don't know if they do it in your neck of the woods, but in ours, they build crawl spaces under garage slabs. And this one happened to be a full 9 foot high. So in other words, the crawl space and the cement slab on grade were at the same level. But the crawl space above it was the garage slab. Why they did the full 9 feet, I don't know, but it was a pleasure working for my guys. That's for sure. So,
sure.
so what we did do that seemed to conquer it is we put our Durascrim over the crawl space, put our suction in there, and it conquered the radon problem for the whole home. But there's been other times when we've had to have two different insertion points, suction points. So you're saying that even when you have slab on grade and a crawl space on the same home, you would still only use one fan between the two.
Absolutely, and then do a T and multiple. We very rarely use 2 fans, and if we do, it's typically due to design of homes not allowing us to do secondaries where we need to do them, because we got too many fan sizes that'll work. But in your last situation, the reason we typically have to do 2 suction points is there's a footing between that crawl space and the slab.
David, I was going to mention that very first house that you and I did over on Washington Street that had 3 suction points because it's a 130-year-old home. They had added onto the house 3 times. There were three different footings. So there was going to be no transmission between one to the other. So you had one under the stairs, you had one in one of the rooms, and then they all just teed into one and went out. And you had to cut your hole in because they had built foundational wall all the way floor to ceiling. So not only were they cutting through that, but they're also cutting through horizontally and vertically on that. So
yeah,
that's a good example of, and we haven't even gotten into having valves on your.
Correct. We got a lot of things we can add to it, but I think that by the way, I got that home because none of my smart competition wanted it, and I was the dumb new guy. But let's move back just a little bit. I think that we could continue this into next week because I want to talk about the sniffer and the radon eye, or the other a continuous monitor device, being the rest of our success story. But our success in very much reducing callbacks had to do with understanding the fan flow, having the right sniffer, and the creation of these things that I personally like, the one that's called the radon eye. but the creation of these homeowner devices that tell you in 12 hours whether you succeeded or not. And typically in a tough home, we'll set that device up before we carry the first tool down the steps, because the trend starts real quickly. I know home inspectors that are also testers that set a radon eye up before they start their inspection, and 3 hours later, when their inspection's done, they'll be able to tell that customer, it's a pretty good chance you're going to have this professional radon test is going to fail, because I'm already seeing the trend on my small device. The point of it is those things start very quickly. But I want to talk a little bit, possibly next week, about the other things. There's 3 things we have used to reduce our callbacks. The one is understanding the fan flow chart, and I want to spend just another minute on that. And the second one is I found a really, really good sniffer. And then the third thing is the creation of all these very accurate homeowner devices have just made all of our jobs easier, I think. And so back on the fan flow chart, I taught a class in Wisconsin. The director of the Wisconsin program invited me up there to teach a class one time on this, and I took a device that even you put the fans on and you have a valve. But anyway, we talked, and what we did was we said, okay, Ron, you just put a Maverick on and the reading is 1.5. What is your flow per minute? And what would be your decision based on that? Well, just remember how simple it is. At anything close to 1.5, put the Maverick back in the box. You put an Eagle on there. If it's close to 3.5, drill another hole to try to get it lower, or put it back in the box and put an Extreme on it. You put an Extreme on it and it's 4.25 or more, start drilling more holes, because you have no more choices. Now, the sniffer will help you determine where to drill those holes or what to do or where your problem is, but we'll get to that later. Just remember, very simply, throw a Maverick back in the box at 1.5 or anywhere near it. Throw an Eagle back in the box at 3.25 or drill another hole. Throw an Eagle Extreme back in it. Well, you can't throw an Eagle Extreme back in the box, but at 4.25, do not go home. And don't trust an Eagle Extreme to fix that house at 4.25. Now, I have lots of exceptions to this. What I'm telling you, I think has reduced my callbacks 75%. But I also been in situations where I simply can't drill a hole anywhere else, and my manometer is horrible. And I left a radon eye there and went home and had the consumer call me the next morning when I asked them to give me the number, and just be totally amazed at the number. But I get plenty of calls from people with the opposite problem too, where they've got great communication, great numbers on the manometer, but still have the radon doesn't get reduced. So those are subjects for later. Today, I wanted to get it simplified. 1.5. No more Maverick. 3.25, Eagle's not doing the job. Second hole, or put it in a box and put an Eagle Extreme on. Eagle Extreme at 4.25, not doing the job. It's really that simple. And understand each one of these fans is going to raise that manometer because it has the ability and has the power to do it.
David, I was going to say, at what point in time do you want to have a conversation about stacking fans? I mean, is that a something that should be an option in?
Well, I think in our next discussion, I'll bring up more examples of homes that I've tried to help fix, because I'm in a great position here that the rest of you aren't. I get calls from all over the United States with problem homes. And most of those guys already know the answer. They just don't have anybody to talk to, is what I always say. But I'm the person that gets to file all of these answers to problem homes. And my policy with all the people that call me with a problem home is, I'll do what I can to make suggestions and help you solve it, as long as you understand I need a phone call once it's solved so you can tell me what it actually was. So in other words, I have a library of cures for problem homes. I've touched on this before, that extends way past my own experiences. And so I have some advantages there, but I think that we need to, it sounds to me like we need to talk more about problem homes, and we'll maybe we'll just continue the discussion next week. But as far as what Ben just asked, we used to stack fans, but today's fans are so powerful. I have a customer that just stacked a couple Eagle Extremes last week. He just couldn't find another solution. But you should almost never, ever have to stack a fan with the amount of power these fans have. So I don't think it's even a factor worth spending time on, because we're not living in those days anymore. The fans' ability has increased so much.
Now on residential, and honestly, stacking two Eagle Extremes has got to feel like the side of your house is taking off all the time. But like at the normal public library, that's a great example of you've got to move a lot of air. So those of you who are doing commercial, schools, multi-unit family buildings, that's a situation where you might be doing that, correct?
Well, and that's a good point too, Ben. I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to talk strictly residential. I have some experience commercial, and I have some interesting, I think, kind of humorous stories about some of the commercial work that I've done. But I don't want to call myself a commercial expert, and I want to limit this to residential as far as trying to help in terms of what has worked for me and my company, and anything I can help you guys and ladies with. Remember that I'm only talking about residential.
Can I throw in just a real quick question?
Yes.
I know we're out of time here, but we had a job a while back where it was that combination crawl space and cement basement, and it was exactly like you talked about. The basement was lower, the crawl space was higher. The customer was an engineer, and he insisted that we put two different systems in, even though they were in close proximity to each other. And we found that we did the crawl space first, even though it was higher than the cement slab by 4 feet. It seemed to conquer the problem. We had a couple of radon eyes in the place, and we noticed a fairly quick drop in the radon. And but he insisted that we go and drill another hole in the cement slab, which we had to go through tile and cement. And we really didn't want to do it, but it was his home, and he wanted a separate fan for that and everything. And we noticed that when we did that, the radon levels went higher. So it actually, I don't know if they were competing with each other. I can't explain, and I was wondering if you could explain why that might be, that to put in two separate systems, were they fighting each other and one became less effective, or why would the radon levels go up?
Well, that's possible, but I will also say there's plenty of things that can happen, and plenty of folks that call me with situations that I'm like, you can't explain everything about this radon, except the basic thing is radon's always going to go to the easiest pathway it can. But also, one source is different than another. In your particular environment, the crawl space must have been the main source of the problem. But radon's still going to go to its easiest pathway. Why your numbers got worse after you installed a second system? That's just a good question that there may not be an answer to. I would have only done it with one system, but at least in the state I live in, you are required to address every. If you have a tri-level with a quad level, anything, you're required to address every level that touches the earth. And and that's a requirement that I think makes sense, because one level can affect the other. And so you identified one of those homes, and occasionally Illinois did a great big beautiful study on it, and they found that I think it was only 3% or 2% of the time, by not addressing the crawl space or the opposite, that the numbers did go up. So in other words, they validated that it is important to do every portion of your home that touches the earth. And we also have a rule in our particular state that says we're responsible for getting the lowest reasonably achievable number. Well, if it's proven that addressing both the crawl space in the basement 99% of the time lowers the numbers, then so be it. But you're always going to have that exception that you're speaking of, Ron, that may not have an explanation. I've always said, all of my people know this, when you have a home that really should have made it, it's 1,500 square feet, great gravel, low manometer, it still doesn't make it. Almost always it's the garage. And I'm like, why the heck the garage that's 8 foot higher has made this radon not make it? I'm not too sure, but I always tell the mitigators, if you don't believe it, ask the consumer to close the garage doors for 12 hours and set a radon eye in there, and you'll probably prove it. So we have multiple situations where we've had the ourselves and we've had our customers add the do a horizontal bore from the basement to catch the garage substrate. I know, Patrick, you're smiling. And that will cure it almost every time on a home that simply doesn't have another explanation as why it didn't make it. It's almost always the garage. Well, tell me why. I don't know, but it's one of those things I accept because it's true. And it's funny too, because those guys that won't believe me, or the customers that won't let them that won't believe it. And I say, prove it. Just put a radon eye in there and ask them if they'll leave the doors closed for 12 hours. They'll call me back and say, oh my gosh, you won't believe how high the radon is in the garage. And I'm like, there you go. And so there's so many things like that about this industry that when Ben came to me and asked me to start doing these things with him, I said, well, aren't we going to run out of topics one of these soon days? How much can you talk about it? Well, after today, I'm not sure that we will run out of the ability to talk about radon, but let's kind of continue on the topic we're on now, because I think it's one of the most important things, or if not the most important things. We don't need callbacks. Callbacks will make you go broke, and callbacks will make you lose the credibility with the consumer. And you don't deserve losing that, because the consumer doesn't understand that this business has those kind of difficulties. But I'll also say, every time I find a plumber or heating guy that wants to get in this industry, almost always they drop the idea after they get X amount of depth into it. They'll drop every time. And the reason they drop is they come to me and say, you're telling me that I can do everything I was taught to do and it still not work? When I install a furnace, it works. When I put a new toilet in a house, it works. And I can do this radon pipe and this fan and do all this, and it's still not going to work. I don't want anything to do with it. In the first place, you guys don't make enough money. You don't make what the plumber and heating guy do. But in the second place, I'm not going to do something that I do what's right and it's still wrong. So, and maybe I will continue that by saying maybe that's why we don't have more competition than we do. But it's a challenging business. I believe it's a challenging business, and I believe that both our national organization and our state organizations really need to understand the challenges we have and do everything they can to help the radon mitigators in the state. And I challenge some of the things that they have done in the past. I challenge some of the things that they've done recently, but I think it's important that we all understand that we have a challenging business, and we need support for that business. And as I said, I've got a pretty good knowledge of problem homes and solutions, but it's not because I'm the smartest guy in the world. It's because I get to talk to everybody that has problems. So I'm willing to share that as much as I can, but I will also add that there's a whole bunch of people that that have a different philosophy about radon and what to do with homes and what to do with problems. So you have to decide what works best for you. I can only tell you what works for best for me and what has been successful for the people I associate with. So let's go ahead and end this for the day. Ben, you can kind of have a closing statement here, but I think it's time we continue this next week because I think we've just scratched the surface.
Well, does anybody have any other questions here on at least the fan flow chart? I mean, honestly, one of the I mean, you alluded to this, but the picking the right fan could be the difference between passing, getting it below 4, and getting it below 4 and undetectable. I mean, it's that big of a like. I know that a lot of people are, guaranteeing that below 4, but I mean, if you can get it down to an undetectable amount because of a fan change, that makes a real difference in that family's radon levels. So it's something to consider.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, you also touched on how the Illinois law says you've got to get it down to the lowest possible. One of the things as a tester when I'm talking with the homeowner, I would say the Illinois law says that it has to get the mitigator has to do it to the best of their ability. And I'm like, just keep in mind that, some people's ability is not as good as other people's ability. And some people are morons. So in every industry, in literally every industry. So that's not to say that radon is immune from it. And so I'm explaining that to the customer. I mean, now, here's your 10-second marketing guide for the day. But, when you are being compared to someone else, we're talking about some of the things are tangible, some of the things are intangible. And if you can communicate that to the client, hey, listen, they both of these things sound the same. Both of them sound like we're gonna, get rid of radon, but let's just look at the chart of what the exposure just in comparison to, we have that chart that, it's like smoking X number of cigarettes per day. What the difference of a radon level of 1 versus 4 is, and it's a big difference. And so I know that most of the mitigators that I know that I work with, they approach every one of their jobs with this idea of we're going to get it down to the lowest amount possible, and we're going to use every trick, every tip, every technique that we can to get it down to. And so that's why understanding the flow chart, and then at the end of the job, obviously the label that you're sticking on there, you want to make sure that you're putting it in an accurate spot where that arrow lines up to where it's supposed to be. And if you don't have the opportunity to talk to the homeowner, if they're not there for some reason, shoot yourself a little video, like right there in their home, put it in selfie mode, turn around and say, okay, here's your thing. This is the manometer. And in this scenario, let's say you've got a Maverick on there, right? So looking at the flow chart, you might explain to the homeowner that you don't want to see 3 column inches on there, right? That more is not better. And I think that that's something that people look at. Oh, the radon fan's not working because it's only showing 0.5 column inches. Okay, well, and the number of people that I work with that I've tested with, and they're like, oh yeah, no, we have a radon level of 1. Well, cool. You got a continuous monitor? No, it says it right on that pipe in our basement. It says 1. I'm like,
Well,
first of all, how cool would that be if that actually did? like if we could gauge it by that, right?
Well,
but
and
now,
by the way, Ben, not to interrupt you, but
yeah,
I'm a manufacturer of manometers. Most of you know, the second largest in the world, but I'm in favor of making it A, B, C, and D. I mean, we both know that A would be one because of so many consumers being confused by the manometer being, and
yeah,
I would love to see that, but it'd be a big expenditure for me to do. And I don't think I could do it unless it became a rule. In other words, if everybody had to do it, it would make that expenditure spread out a little bit. But that's a good point. But I wanted to say one other thing about if anyone that calls me that wants to discuss a problem home that they're scratching their head about, my first two questions are going to be what fan is on it and what is the manometer reading. So that tells you how important those two things are to me to help anyone. So I think it's time we close this up, but let's keep
yeah,
this thing going and thanks for watching, folks.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys. We will see you next week. We'll continue this on the topic of, you know, the right tools for the job. So, and by all means, if you guys have questions, throw them in the chat. And we've got Jim Harlow asked real fast, what's the sniffer you use? I know you mentioned the Radon Eye for fast diagnosis, but do you use something else?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd like to cover that next week. But there's a sniffer that we found, and we've had it for several years. I've suggested it to multitudes of customers that I believe is the three secrets to my callbacks being low are the fan flow chart, the sniffer, and the creation of all these homeowner devices that are so effective. But yes, I'd like to talk about the sniffer that I use next week. I better call the poor old guy that manufactures them and make sure he doesn't say, no, don't do that. I don't have very many of them made, but a lot of you folks that are listening have already purchased that or at least heard about it. So, but I do want to cover that in depth next week. I think it's a great diagnostic tool for the home that's giving you a head scratch.
So next week, going to be diagnostic tools.
There you
This
go.
might be the furthest out that David and I have decided on the topic. A full 7 days.
Yeah, instead of 4 hours.
When you're getting that email on Wednesday, that is the me texting David going, all right, what are we talking about this week? So when I'm begging for questions from you guys, it is we love that. It gives us something to put on the agenda. So thank you guys so much. This is on YouTube. It's on the Facebook group if you're not on there. And check those out. And we will see you. Have a great weekend. Try not to work too much.